A Look at Finance is underwritten by Janney Montgomery Scott, trusted advisors for generations.
Welcome back. The Thursday before Labor Day weekend. Stephen Carleton, First Vice President, Janney Montgomery Scott, here with our weekly Look at Finance.
Thanks, David.
Thank you for being here. Heading into the Labor Day weekend, obviously.
Can you believe it? The whole summer, where did it go?
Summer is gone. We're heading
incredible.
into the fall
Yeah.
and into some really important months ahead when we look at the economy. A lot going on in the economy as we head into the Labor Day weekend. So let's just get right to it.
Absolutely.
We'll dissect it all. GDP, big bump, second quarter, up from 1.7% was the original numbers, right?
Right.
Forecast up to 2.5%. That's a big increase.
Yeah, the gross domestic product, why does it matter? It is a measure on what the U.S. is actually producing, how much we're growing. We want to see that number in that 3 to 4% range. So when it came in at 1.7 originally, we're like, that's really weak. This upgrade to 2.5% is a good encouraging sign because it says the U.S. economy is still moving forward, it's still growing, where a lot of other economies and countries can't put that kind of number up.
You know, how did they, just, you know, for a layman, up 0.8%, the revision, how did they come in so low? How did they revise it up? What was the data that came in to help them do that?
Sure, there's a series of estimates that are done. So whether it's manufacturing, whether it's export, whether it's consumer spending, all those numbers, they don't necessarily have all the data in when they first make the estimate, but it's kind of a best guess based on the data that they have. And as the data comes in, they make revisions to update what actual factual material that they have. And so this is a best guess that's been revised as they get more and more of the data in.
Well, good news that the economy perhaps is recovering quicker than we originally thought. Something that's really held the line all summer long is the unemployment numbers. You know, staying steady at about 330,000 jobs. Heading to the end of the summer, though, could that spell, perhaps some challenges to that trend?
Well, we look at the summer as kind of a seasonally adjusted period. And what I mean by that is there's seasonal jobs, there's summer jobs, there's all those kinds of things that can bring down the unemployment number. As we go into summer, the end of summer, into the school season, a lot of those jobs go away. And so this 330 number that we've seen since the middle of July, we really need to see that stay consistent and continue to go lower. If it creeps back up to 345, 350, then that doesn't bode well for us keeping it that unemployment number at that 7.5% or lower, which the Fed is really anxious to see.
It may not be a surprise if it comes in lower. A lot of places, even across our area, you think about Lake George, the summer hotels are going to start laying off staff. Great Escape,
yes,
again, will start laying off staff. So we're going to see some kind of a change in that
There's
number.
no question that they will. What percentage of that is worse than it was last year?
Okay.
And that's what we're looking for. Is there a greater degree of layoffs than seasonally what we typically see for this time of year?
It's interesting that we're talking about the economy recovering quicker, but every other part of news that we're getting to here, there's some gray clouds over it. The next one, the next major headline, obviously, what's happening in Syria.
Yes.
And the discussion right now, should there be some kind of a strike against Syria because of the threat or the alleged threat that they use chemical weapons against their own people.
Yeah, you know, sometimes people ask and they say, why are we talking about these countries on the other side of the world? What does it matter for, Glens Falls or Saratoga, Warren County? What does it matter for Albany? How can they influence things? And when we look at Syria, we have to put in the context of oil prices. When it comes to putting gas in our car or heating fuel, all the costs associated with oil are directly affected by the Middle East. And when that's unstable, which we've seen for quite a bit of time now with Egypt and with Iran, and now bringing Syria into the equation, people are tired of war. The vast majority of Americans are coming back and saying, we don't want to go into another war. But because of the humanity element of what we've done in the past, if this proves to be that there actually was chemical weapons unleashed on the citizens, Obama's kind of put a line in the sand and said, we have to respond. This is going to be very politically unpopular, but it is a philosophy on the way we as Americans interact with the world. So it's a very, very precarious situation to be in.
Yeah, obviously this is developing by the moment. President Obama has come out and said he hasn't made a decision yet on what they want to do. Right. His counterpart in the United Kingdom, David Cameron, is forging ahead, meeting with Parliament, calling for a UN resolution, saying if he doesn't get the UN resolution, he has the legal right to go into Syria or have some kind of action against Syria. So this is a really volatile situation.
This is huge. I mean, we're watching Turkey respond and say what their opinion is, Saudi Arabia. The entire Middle East has differing opinions on how to respond to this. And this is already an incredibly complicated region, the relationship with Israel and the rest of these countries. So we could see oil, if this gets worse, we could see oil $140, $150 a barrel. If this doesn't escalate, I'm hoping it goes back to where people were thinking that we would see oil prices, gas come in at around $3.50 a gallon coming into mid-September. But the wild card here is, do the missiles fly? Does an invasion take place? And that could change and put a lot of pressure on people.
Every time you go to the gas pump, I mean, we're expecting that fall. The gas prices to fall off a little when we head into autumn. That could not happen. Of course, it's like the cycle that we've got going here because we're talking about unemployment numbers, we're talking about GDP.
It's all related.
It's all related. Let's continue on the economic news. Mortgage rates, another part of our economy that really could start to falter pretty quickly. It already has.
Well, one of the things that we try to do is we try to look back and say, what have we talked about in the past and how is it moving forward? So you and I have talked in the news a number of times about people getting in at mortgage rates, the last chance when they could get in, when mortgage rates were at 3 1/3, 3.5%. If you're going to get a house, you're going to apply for a mortgage, get it now, because the rates are going to go a lot higher. And since those conversations in April and May, we've seen interest rates on mortgages go all the way up to 4.5%. They're very close now, nearing 5%. That puts the cost of home ownership out of range for a lot of people because their incomes haven't kept pace. And people are saying, why did the interest rates move so quickly? It goes back to what we were talking about the Federal Reserve. Ben Bernanke, what they're doing with tapering, buying bonds, what the Federal Reserve is saying about interest rates, it affects everything from our credit cards, interest rates, our car loans, our mortgages, all those kinds of things. So part of this discussion is understanding that cause and effect and saying, when the Fed says they're going to raise interest rates, here's how it's going to affect us.
Yeah, and obviously we're going to see some changes at the Federal Reserve. Will be a new chairman, probably Summers.
Yes.
And he's going to have to make some tough decisions about whether he's going to continue to hold the line on austerity.
It's not only is Ben Bernanke leaving, but there will be several other members, possibly 5 or 6 that leave. So I think Larry Summers is going to come in this fall, and there's going to be a lot of pressure to not let the stock market go down, to keep housing going, and it's going to be very, very difficult for him to taper too quickly. I think we might see that everybody's expecting this quick tapering to happen in September. It may not be as aggressive as people are originally thinking.
All right. We probably only have about a minute left today, and I think we should probably talk about this more next week, but let's start the conversation rolling today. The lost decade, and a report from the Fiscal Policy Institute says that New York's economy, the last 10 years, is a lost decade. For the typical workers with the median wages, they saw for men it dropped 7%, for women it dropped 1%. So we're talking about oil prices going up, mortgage rates going up, all these different impacts on our wallet, and we're seeing our wages disappear.
And our wages over a 10-year period have gone down. This is, like you said, this is an ongoing story. We want to continue to follow this because this is the struggle of the average American family. It's not going away. It's talking about strikes at McDonald's. People cannot live on $7.25 an hour. They're having to supplement it with food stamps and other things. So this is something that we're seeing in our communities, and it has a ripple effect all across our county. So, yeah, there's a lot of concern there in saying, we need to revisit and look at some of this stuff.
Yeah, this is obviously today across the country. There's these strikes at fast food restaurants. I guess you can't call it a strike because they're not unionized. But these work stoppages. Just quickly, the Washington Post reporting that this father, 34-year-old father of 3, working 2 jobs. He's making $9.30 an hour at Burger King, then $7.47 at Pizza Hut. I mean, if you have 3 kids, you just can't.
How do you make ends meet?
Can't make ends meet.
And this is a story that I think resonates with so many people across the country, and we're both very passionate about this because this is what the average American is facing. Costs going up, incomes going down. We've got to see some changes there.
Yeah, next week, let's go in depth on this more. We've got what's going on with the fast food restaurants. We've talked about it before in the state of Vermont. They have the livable wage, where a lot of companies have to pay livable wage. That's actually in trouble up there because they just, companies are fighting back, and to pay somebody $20+ an hour to work at a coffee shop doesn't add up. So we've got to come to some kind of a solution here.
So
But it's
compromise, yeah.
A great conversation. We'd encourage you at home to join us in that as well. You know, folks can contact us here at the station. We'll get into that more next Thursday.
Thanks, David.
It's always too much to talk about.
There's a lot going on, but it's always good to sit down and have these kind of conversations.
It's good to be able to dissect a lot of these numbers. We appreciate your expertise.
Always a pleasure.
Stephen Carleton, First Vice President from Janney, Montgomery. Scott, now to see this segment, all our Look at Finance segments, and of course, interact with us. Send us a message if you're working one of those minimum wage jobs and you want to share your story with us. Head to the website. It's looktvonline.com. We'd love to have your experiences be a part of our conversation.